Peace. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, family, to Tea Time Podcast by Atiya J. This is your self-help, spiritual podcast, uplifting topics we all love to avoid, but we definitely need to conquer. Tea Time is your moment to pause, listen, and absorb what is soothing to you. I'm Atiya J, aka Tia, a certified holistic life coach, and this idea was sparked by my passion to help others discover their latent potential, purpose, and significance, especially if you are one who feels overlooked, alone, or forgotten. You are not alone. You are not forgotten. I see you and I feel you. Welcome to Tea Time Podcast. Enjoy the tea. Peace. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone to another episode of Tea Time Podcast. It's your girl, Atiya J, aka Tia, aka TT, and I'm continuing with the theme of conquering fear, our season 4 of the podcast theme. Today, we are conquering fear of godliness. Now, you all know I love to start with definitions, but before we get to the definition of a God, I wanted to first let you all know where this idea topic came from. What stood out to me while I was reading the Holy Quran during Ramadan was the story of Jonah. And it stood out to me so much that I had to go to the story of Jonah in the Bible. And when I read to the story of Jonah, it actually related to me a lot. And while reading, I kept in mind the fact that during Ramadan, I wanted to get rid of procrastination. That was my goal, to get rid of procrastination and to do it in a way to where I don't have to worry about it anymore. I can finally do my things, do the things that I wanted to do. And my understanding of procrastination has gone from this idea that when you procrastinate, you are lazy and you're just avoiding doing something because of your laziness. And I've actually become much more well-versed in the real understanding of procrastination as it being rooted in fear. Procrastination is rooted in fear, in the fear of doing something because you're unable to do it, you won't do it well, or whatever other reason you have. And I actually just read in Iyanla Vanzant's book, Trust. This is Trust by Iyanla Vanzant. And I've been reading it, and it speaks to the reader about mastering the 4 essential trusts: the trust in self, the trust in God, the trust in others, and the trust in life. Now, I'm somebody who always said I had trust issues, right? And of course I do, because I had a father who was not there for me. He abandoned me and my sisters when we were young. So of course I have trust issues. I used to applaud myself for having trust issues, and that's pretty disgusting, and it actually ties into this fear of godliness that I believe we have because of the society that we live in. I think it's very unnatural to applaud the fact that I have trust issues. Ha ha ha. I don't trust other people. If as people we were meant to live in communities and we're meant to create families and build together, we can't live as human beings individually only, then we should not have trust issues. That is a disease to have a trust issue. That's something wrong with how a human being is naturally supposed to be and naturally supposed to live. So I was recommended by my sister Brianna, who has been on the podcast before. Shout out to you, Bri. I was recommended this book from her, and I finally started picking it up and reading it. So Trust. Today when I was reading, I found a definition of procrastination that I think ties in perfectly with what we're about to talk about with the story of Jonah and conquering the fear of godliness. Stay tuned. Stay with me now. It's addressing self-sabotage. So she writes, self-sabotage is a common response to forcing ourselves to do something we do not believe we can do or should be doing, rather than run the risk of finding success or meeting with failure. We pull out, abandon, or mess up before we can even complete the task. Another common self-sabotaging behavior is procrastination. When self-trust is low or lacking, we will put things off by making the unimportant important. We will do all those things we tell ourselves must be done before we can begin something that's new or frightening or less pleasurable. We also use the need to prepare, the need to know, or the need to have something we do not yet have before we begin something we do not trust ourselves to do. Fear, shame, past guilt, and lack of forgiveness will also fuel procrastination. When these feelings are present in our consciousness, we will manufacture excuses not to do what we need to do because we don't believe or feel that we can or should do it. Self-sabotage is an internal response to, as well as an attempt to save us from the energy generated by our disowned negative feelings. So procrastination is a behavior stemming from self-sabotage. Now, when I was reading the story of Jonah, if you know the story of Jonah, it is an entire story about self-sabotage and procrastination. If you don't know the story of Jonah, I'll just summarize it, and I'm going to read it in a more extended podcast that you can check out at patreon.com/teatimepodcast. But the story of Jonah is all about this man who got a message from God that your purpose is to be a prophet to these people, to help them redeem themselves, because I am going to destroy the town of Nineveh unless you are able to deliver the message and they receive it, accept it, and change their behavior. Jonah said, God, that is not me. That's not for me. I can't do this. No. And he ran away. Jonah ran away. He was running away from his purpose. He was running away from who God said he is. He was running away so that he did not have to complete his task. He was procrastinating. And I found it very interesting that the story of Jonah stuck out to me when I prayed, and my focus during Ramadan was to kill the procrastination that habit and behavior that I've developed within myself. And being blunt and being honest and vulnerable, the procrastination that I am struggling with now centers solely around my purpose. And it centers around me raising my children and being sure about the education that I am giving my children. I plan to homeschool. I am homeschooling. I am homeschooling my children. And I am doing this because I believe the educational system is failing our children, all of our children, and especially Black children. So I do not want to put my children in a system that I believe is failing them. And as a former teacher, somebody who quit the teaching profession because of the system, and also because of the energy and the feel of the faculty as well within the system, I don't want to put my children into that. I want to do better for them. And I have been procrastinating creating more structured and more focused educational lessons and educational curriculum for my children because I'm afraid. To be extremely vulnerable, I am afraid of doing that task. I am afraid of being a teacher outside of the structure of what teaching in this society is. I feel that I'm not worthy and I'm not knowledgeable enough and I'm not able to actually be that teacher for my children that I would like to be. And that I know that within my heart, I am tasked to be, because I believe it's my purpose to be an educator. So Now that I am faced, because of the reality of having my children, now that I am faced with having to actually do the work and having to actually make homeschool happen, I am procrastinating. I have been running from it. I've been making excuses for it. And I just have to be vulnerable with that. And that's something that I am striving to fix. I'm striving to turn around, because I do want to structure school for my children. And I do believe that I can do it, but there is some fear of unworthiness that is stopping me from actually making it happen. That being said, that ties closely to Jonah. And guess what God did in that story? God allowed Jonah, go ahead, run away, go on, do your thing. And Jonah went on his path. He hopped on a boat to get away from Nineveh. He said, no, you are not steering me, God. You're not going to steer me towards my path and my purpose. I'm going to get on a boat. So I'm in the sea and you cannot touch me, and I'm far from Nineveh. Well, God stirred the waters, and Jonah was, even when he was on that boat, the people on the boat who were doing their purpose of being seamen, they noticed that I think Jonah is the person that's causing this storm. Like, he seems to be bringing an energy that is unlike himself. He is not being himself. He is being other than himself. As Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches, that we have been taught to be as Black people in America. We've been taught to be other than ourselves. And Jonah was being other than himself. And the seamen even recognized that, man, this man is weird. And he's causing the storm to happen. So Jonah actually volunteered to go overboard. He essentially was going to kill himself in order to run away from his purpose. He went that far with it. And he was swallowed up by a whale, right? That's how the story goes, which of course is a metaphor. And while he was in this darkness of the belly of the beast, he was surviving. He was still alive. And while he was in that belly of the beast, he started having a revelation like, wow, God is still keeping me here. Let me change my ways. And eventually he went on to Nineveh and actually saved the people, because the people received, accepted the message, and changed their behavior. So what does this have to do? I think it's kind of clear what it has to do with procrastination. But what does this have to do with godliness? Let's look up the definition of a God. According to Britannica.com, the definition of a God is a spirit or being that has great power, strength, knowledge, etc., and that can affect nature and the lives of people. One of various spirits or beings worshipped in some religions. Another definition is a person, and especially a man, who is greatly loved or admired. A person who is very important or powerful in a particular field. Another definition, something that is regarded as one of the most important things in someone's life. Through those definitions, I want us to think about ourselves. According to those definitions, God is within you. God is a being, God is one, God is a person who has great power and strength. Simply how I've heard it in the nation is, God is one who has force and power and is able to create and is able to do something with it. So each of us have force and power, and each of us are able to do things, but we have this fear. We have this feeling of unworthiness, of inability to do. We have this fear of what will happen if I do it. We have this fear of standing out and being unique, as we talked about in the last podcast episode. Check it out. We have this fear of being a God. We have this fear of being somebody who is powerful and strong. We have this fear of being the center of attention of somebody else's life, right? Me as a mom right now, guess who the first God of a child is? It's their mother. We just had Mother's Day yesterday. Mothers are so celebrated, right? Because they are the first God that every single human being recognizes. Because as a mother, I am the center of my daughter's, of my son's life. They don't know anything except me at first. And then they learn their father, and then they learn the world. However, I am always the center. When my daughter needs something that is for her survival, she calls out for me. My son, when he's crying and screaming, he is calling for me. And that is a scary feeling. And that's something that I have not accepted even for myself. So when it comes to creating their homeschooling curriculum, I put it off. I procrastinate. And I'm praying and striving to do better every single day. And opening up and actually speaking about it is something that does help me to be able to conquer that fear of godliness. So when it comes, if you're not a mother and you're not a parent and you're not a teacher or making a homeschooling curriculum, I want you to think about what is it that you would like to do that you are not doing? What is it that you have a passion for that you have been too afraid to actually go into? And that fear can show up in different ways. That fear can show up in you telling yourself, no, I can't, paint that painting that I would like to paint because I don't have time for it. I can't begin to step into government contracting because my job takes up too much of my time and I need to give all that time to my job. I can't, right? When we tell ourselves we can't, then we are stifling the force and power that we have to do. We are stifling the force and power that we have in order to accomplish what is in our hearts and our minds to accomplish. We are stifling the God within. We are killing the godliness, right? That's why it's important for us to kill procrastination, because procrastination, I believe, is one of the most common ways that fear show up in our lives. And as a Muslim in the Nation of Islam, I was taught to fear no one but Allah. And that means that we need to be in tune with ourselves. That means we need to accept the God within. And the minister actually just said this so beautifully on his 90th birthday, and I'm going to put the clip in here.
You are so great. You don't need to cheapen yourself. You need to discover yourself. And then I close with this. Love God. Ooh. With all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. Do you know I do that? That's why you don't see me messing over people. I will not do that because I know who you are. We all act terrible at times. But if God was moved by how we act, he would have gone away from America. But he looked deep within us and he saw God. And when he found Elijah, he found the perfect companion for what he wanted to do, make all things new.
The minister in the clip that we just watched talked about accept the beauty within you. Like, accept the beauty within you, and that helps you to see the beauty in other people, and then that helps you to love God. And then that also helps you to live a purposeful life. When we conquer the fear of being a God, when we conquer the fear of our own uniqueness, of our own specialty, like our own gifts, our own talents, our own tasks, when we conquer the fear of what us being so powerful can do, look at how that power can be so attractive and so healing and so necessary for the people around us who we impact and for the world. Like, the story of Jonah is so key, and I hope that everyone can connect to it. In the story of Jonah, we notice how Jonah was just like completely unappreciative of his godliness, even towards the end. And God was still merciful to him. He allowed him to save the city of Nineveh. And even after that, Jonah was ungrateful. He said, hey, you made me do this uncomfortable thing that I did not want to do. And then you didn't even destroy the city. Like, destroy it. Why won't you destroy it? Isn't that what is supposed to happen? And God said, you're concerned with matters that you do not control. You are only a messenger, and I am proud of you for what you did. And wow, that just gave me another realization that even when we do our purpose, sometimes we want to do more. Like me right now, as a wife, as a mother, I'm really relegated to doing wife and mother things. And I am fighting so hard to do more than what I am relegated by the reality of my life right now to do. I still try to live sometimes as if I'm that single flight attendant who is out here in a different space and place every day. That's not me. That's not who I am right now. And in being in tune with my godliness, in conquering my fear of godliness, I need to recognize that a God knows when and knows where to put his force and power. In closing, procrastination, the story of Jonah, and godliness, they all have something to do with each other, because when we are running away from our godliness or who we actually are, when we are not being ourselves in order to conform to this society or in order to make ourselves insignificant. Sometimes we strive so hard to make ourselves insignificant to avoid challenging ourselves to grow and to be better. And when we do that, we begin to practice the behavior of procrastination. It becomes a lifestyle for us. I've experienced that. However, in being a God and being who we truly are, like we saw with Jonah, when we spiritually incline ourselves and elevate ourselves towards our Creator, towards our purpose, towards a greater good, when we do that and actually submit to God and actually submit our will to His will, to the Creator's will, to our purpose, to our reason for being, when we actually submit to being ourselves, then we become the gods that we are meant to be. That is how we conquer fear. That is how we become great. That is how a Minister Farrakhan is a Minister Farrakhan. That is how a Mother Tynetta is a Mother Tynetta. That is how a Muhammad Ali is a Muhammad Ali. That is how a Martin Luther King Jr. is a Martin Luther King Jr. Because he submitted his will to God's, and he accepted his greatness, he accepted his godliness, and actually moved forward with it. He submitted to doing something greater by submitting to just walking in life being himself. So when you are being yourself, as the minister said, that is how you conquer the fear of godliness, of the God within. My name is Atiya J. Muhammad. Muhammad isn't my legal name, but that is the name that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, I believe in the 90s, should be the names that we hold. Muhammad. When we look at the name Muhammad means praiseworthy, or one who is worthy to be praised. When you think about that, the definition of the name Muhammad, and then the definition of God, a being with force and power, a being who is greatly loved or admired, something that is regarded as one of the most important things in someone's life. When you think of the definition of God and the definition of Muhammad, they kind of go hand in hand. So, in the minister teaching his followers to take on the name Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, in a masterful way, was letting us know that we are gods, was letting us know that it's time for us to accept our name Muhammad and to accept the God within us.
How could Allah, God, make Adam his Khalifa if Adam did not have the capabilities within himself to stand in the place of God over stewardship of what God created? Am I making sense? So when you look at yourself as a Muslim, we are permitted by God to wear His names. His are the best names. So we have Ali, we have Kareem, we have Hakim, we have Muhammad, we have Sharif. These are noble names of Allah. Why would He allow us to wear these names if we could not manifest those characteristics in our lives? So we are servants of Allah, and as we submit our will to do His will, He grows us up so that we could stand in His stead and become stewards over the earth.
It's time for us to conquer the fear of godliness. And we can accept toxicity, right? We can accept, we ain't, you know what I mean? We have these quotes and these ideas about ourselves and other people. When we look at other people, that's a reflection of ourselves. But we have these ideas that are championed by this society that put us in a negative light, put human beings in a negative light. So it's time to flip that and accept us in a positive light. It's time to be positive, to think positive, to accept our own and be ourselves, like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us, which means to conquer the fear of the God within us, conquer the fear of being godly, conquer the fear of possibly being somebody who has a lot of force and power, conquer the fear of possibly being someone who is worthy to be praised, conquer the fear of possibly being someone who can create a homeschooling curriculum, who can shift the educational system and create a new one so that children in the newer generations can actually be educated, can actually know that they have a purpose, and then can actually have the structure that helps them to bring their purpose from within them and into action. So I hope that these ideas are making sense. I hope that you have gotten something from this. I hope it has been fruitful. I hope it's been useful to you. And we definitely will have to dive into this topic again. A short podcast cannot do it justice. But I appreciate you all for listening. I appreciate you all for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the tea. And if you can, please subscribe on Spotify. You can go to patreon.com/Tea Time Podcast, and you can subscribe on Patreon as well and support the podcast monthly. I would also like everyone, if you're watching on YouTube, to like, subscribe, and share so that the podcast can be heard by other people and you will always know when I drop another video. And I would also like you all to visit buyatiyaj.com/teatimepodcast and learn more about the podcast. Stay updated right there. I appreciate you all for tuning in, for listening to my voice, listening to my words, and I pray that you have a blessed day. Peace.